This is Frank Islam, Chairman and CEO of FY Investment Group, and your host of Washington Calling, where we interview leading voices from business and politics that impact you, the viewer. Today, we are fortunate to have a distinguished guest, and her name is Professor Sreeradha Datta. May not have pronounced it correctly, but if I do not, I apologize. She's a professor of Global Jindal University in India, a non-resident fellow Institute of South Asian Studies in Singapore. She is the best person today to tell our audience about what's happening in Bangladesh. She continues to serve on the academic boards of several universities. So my question to you is, where do we start from you? Well, my question, thank you for coming to our show and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah.
Talking with you.
Okay. You are a South Asian academic with a special interest in Bangladesh, a country in that many say went through a second revolution recently. Do you believe what happened in August 5 in Bangladesh, and do you think the revolution was expected? And what are the challenges, political challenges that Bangladesh faces today?
Yes, there has been many such interesting phrases being used like a revolution. I would actually hold back a little bit on those phrases, but it's certainly break from the past, break from what has been the tendency of the last government who was there for 3 consecutive terms. And
Sheikh Hasina, the Prime
Sheikh
Minister.
Hasina, yes.
Where is she right now?
She's in India just now. She had to leave her country on 5th of August because I think what we know from the public domain is that the army chief said that he would not be able to keep her safe because I think there was a lot of local resentment against her, and it seemed that the youth would overrun Gandhi Bhavan, which it happened eventually, of course, but she had left and she was safely in India at that point of time. So subsequently, as you know, I think from 8th August onwards, Nobel laureate Professor Yunus has taken as the head of the interim government, which has now got about 21 members, of which, of course, there are 2 student members too, in part for some 2 particular portfolios. I think the first and foremost, given the violence we saw in the aftermath, not only, I mean, there was this whole thing led to the student and the state security apparatus, the problem that they had, and then, of course, 5th August event. But subsequent to 5th August, we saw a huge law and order problem in the country, where, of course, the police forces, as you know, have been extremely unpopular and they went back and they were not there. And military, of course, wasn't wanting to do anything given what they had faced a few days ago. So right now, I think restoration of peace, stability, law and order, and as we all know, Bangladesh's economy hasn't been doing well. From the time that Bangladesh was known as that, the miracle growth and all of those things that we talked about, but a year and more, in fact, I would say more, we've seen the economy really go downhill. So right now, I think the government has to address that, has to address the huge corruption that the banking sector saw. So those kind of, I think, are priority. And of course, there are many other factors that they would have to examine, but more importantly, give way to a free and fair election. I think that's what the youth would want to see.
Since we're talking about the free and fair election, do you think the interim government, led by Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus, who I know personally, I met him several times in the United States, capable of holding free and fair election in Bangladesh? Can this government help restore law and order? What the future holds for its democracy? Does this development impact the region and in sense a broader global community? Is Bangladesh on the brink of new democracy, the new life?
Let me begin with democracy. One of my first walks on Bangladesh, I called it Bangladesh a fragile democracy. I still believe that Bangladeshis want to see democracy. But what there has been a history of every particular political leader elected. Once they elected, they trample with the system. And we've seen how judiciary, legislature, everything kind of gets, under the cloud. And so that is something which again, as I said, this 5th August was a breakthrough moment. We really hope that they'll be able to kind of get the systemic problems in place. In fact, they will address the systemic problems, which is what we just referred to earlier. But I think elections is something that Bangladesh would certainly want, either multi-party elections, which we didn't see the last couple of years in Bangladesh. So I do believe that it has been troubled in for the last several decades, just not now. But Bangladeshis, I think, yearn for multi-party, free and fair, democratic standards and norms to be established properly. I would
Do you
certainly.
think they're going to get a democracy and they're going to restore the law and order? This fellow?
Yes, yes, certainly. I think, I'm just going by the precedence of the previous interim government who, it was known as the caretaker government who overstayed. But they were able to restore a lot of the problems that the polity was facing at that time. This is the period of between 2006 to 2008. So we actually saw Bangladesh in 2008 December elections for the first time have a extremely clean voters list, a separation of organs of the government, and many other positive elements which were introduced by that particular caretaker government, which is certainly backed by the military. But this time it's a different nature. We still haven't seen any timeline. We know that interim government would suddenly want to hold free and fair elections, but haven't seen a timeline from them as yet, and I'm not sure what is it that they want to do. As I said, priority would be to restore peace and order, get the economy going, but how many things can they tackle, or how many things would they just want to address in the immediate context, and then have elected government, take over and address many of the other systemic problems that Bangladesh has been faced with in the last couple of decades.
There are reports that Bangladeshi students who led the recent uprising to oust Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's autocracy. She was pretty much not a she was an autocratic ruler, just like Modi is in India. Sometimes some people feel that way. I shouldn't be saying that, but I did. And if I did, I apologize. Applying to start a political party to end the country's domination by two political parties led by two women. Do you believe it's a wise move?
Certainly, I would actually think that this is a good time to break this completely, dynastic politics that Bangladesh has seen ever since.
Well, the
And
one
also,
led by Sheikh Hasina's father
yes,
was a
but also Khalida Zia, if you recall,
yeah, right,
BNP
right.
was done by Ziaur Rahman, and then it's Khalida Zia. And of course, her son is sitting in London right now, facing a lot of charges. So I don't know, but it's both the political parties, the two main political parties, are very very steeped into family hierarchy. And that binary, so both dynastic politics and the binary of only two political parties, I think this is the break, and if the students can, only they will be able to. So I do certainly hope, what you are suggesting, that their hopes and aspirations for new political parties to come up through the movement that students have led. I would certainly look forward to that, because that would actually, enable a far more greater level playing field for every political actor and stakeholders in Bangladesh.
How will the Bangladesh changes impact the political dynamics in South Asia, in particular the ties with India? The Modi and, as I understand, uh, Prime Minister of Bangladesh were good friends. Do you think that Bangladesh will remain a democracy?
Yes, I think so. I mean, I don't doubt that, and I think that's what the youth have been talking about. But I think in terms of relationship with India, it is true that Bangladesh Awami League has historically been very close with India. Sheikh Hasina has been a very old friend of India. She stayed here earlier, if you recall, when assassination of Mujib took place. When she was not able to enter Bangladesh, she was here for 6, 7 years. So clearly, there's a long, deep friendship that exists between India and Sheikh Hasina. And Prime Minister Modi, as you say, has also carried on with that. So while that aspect is also true, but I do believe right now we are sitting in that kind of a crux where in South Asia or elsewhere, there's an interdependence which has grown. And while India is certainly, and I think Prime Minister Modi has said this many times, that many of India's international ambitions, what it wants to do, its goals, all of that is also taking Bangladesh along with it. And much of that, in terms of regionalism, cross-border facility, transport, infrastructure that we are building, needs Bangladesh's support, which Bangladesh is very ably given under Sheikh Hasina. But also Bangladesh, as you know, India, issues the highest number of visas in the world for Bangladeshis, which is essentially on medical tourism, but even otherwise. And also in terms of the economy, as you know, Bangladesh's one of the major contributors of its growth story is the ready-made garment, which is all
Right,
goes
right, with the
towards
government. And they come to United States also
Yes,
for
exactly.
Europe.
United States, EU, and other countries where they earn a lot from that. But a large portion of that industry is also supported by the raw materials they buy from India. So I'm
Right.
just
Oh,
saying
okay.
on various levels, Bangladesh and India are interdependent. And I think the youth would want to see, lives, which is something that they want to see a better future, a more positive future, and that only lies in working together. I'm always convinced about the fact, and I go to say it again, while at this point of time while I'm speaking to you, if you just open Facebook or any of the other social media, you'll see there's a lot of anti-India rhetoric going on in Bangladesh, which is natural because it's a reflection of they're very angry with what Sheikh Hasina, you use the word autocrat, she certainly was, and she suppressed many voices. So clearly there has been anger and resentment, and since we are so closely aligned to her, the anger also has been on India. I mean, it's a natural fallout. But I think once sense prevails, once tempers cool down, they will see the dividends in working with India. That I think should not be lost on the youth. And I've been, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of these interviews these student leaders have done. They're so impressive. I mean, every time I hear somebody, they actually have a vision for Bangladesh. And I'm
They have a
sure they
vision.
understand that, a healthy, robust Bangladesh is possible when it, works with its neighbors closely. Also, and India is a very important neighbor for them.
Tell me a little bit about the population of Bangladesh and what are the main industry they focus on, and why the relationship between United States and India as well as other countries should be a cornerstone of their democracy.
Well, ready-made garment industry, of course, is the main, focus, and they're now trying to. We've often talked about this, how they need to, get that basket into different other, and they're looking at artificial intelligence. They're looking at the other, service
Other
sector and things.
aspects. Yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think US has, as I said, not only because of the ready-made garment industry, but US and Bangladesh have had a close relationship for a variety of reasons. If you recall, this was a couple of years ago in Bangladesh launched its Indo-Pacific Outlook, which was certainly, I'm sure, something that US would have encouraged it to do. So clearly, Bangladesh has a vision where it also, is working in what Bangladesh US sees in terms of what the region offers. So Bangladesh clearly positions itself on, at that space. But in the recent, especially in the last election early this year in January, when we saw that Bangladesh was heading towards a kind of again a one-sided election, and I remember USA making some very strong
A
voices against that.
statement.
You remember there's a sanction that was brought in against RAB. There were threats of other sanctions if the election was going to be one-sided. So there has been that little complication about that. But I think US's interest in South Asia is something which is going to be enduring and sustainable. And Bangladesh is also part of the Indo-Pacific Bay of Bengal, the growth story that they're looking at in terms of developing more partnership in the region.
So you described the fact that the U.S. was not happy with the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, but Professor Yunus seems to have many friends in the United States who have protested his prosecution at the hands of Hasina. How do you see the U.S. role play out in Bangladesh, where we understand that China has substantial stake? Not that we compete against China, But I just want to get your reaction. What do you think about it?
US and Bangladesh will continue to work together, and the very fact that you mentioned Professor Yunus has friends who support him from US. So I think US would like to see Bangladesh go back to a multi-party democratic nation,
Right. Not a
which is,
two-party system
yes, not
led
the
by two
two-party system.
women. Right.
Yeah, I mean, that I think break everybody wants to see that, but and it's without. I mean, of course, that we know at this point of time, we've seen former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has issued a couple of statements, which is she's alleging that it was thanks to it was US who's been behind this particular
Right.
movement and all of that, but
I hope
without
I
going
hope
in.
I hope that's not the case.
I wouldn't think so, but I mean,
But you never
how
know.
whatever. I leave it there. But that's what I'm saying, that there is a long-term interest that both will work together. But at the same time, I would like to mention that China is actually the one who has far greater stakes in South Asia, as well as Bangladesh. And over the years, not only has ever since 95, when post Mujib, that China recognized Bangladesh, from that time to now, China has been not only their greatest, the the strongest defense partner, but in terms of the growth story, the infrastructure development, much of what has positive infrastructure development and other things that has happened in Bangladesh has been very ably supported by China. While of course there are many questions about the kind of the funds which has been used, the kind of loans, credit. Bangladesh is facing challenges in terms of its debt servicing now, but it's not necessarily because of the problem of China, but because of endemic corruption, many of the infrastructure projects, if you look at the budget, it's double usually of what the similar infrastructure development that's taken place in other countries in South Asia, in India inclusive. So those are the things which are now coming out in the open. There has been some talk about it on and off. So those issues will be addressed, but China is one particular country who's been able to very effectively work with across the leaders. It doesn't matter who's in Dhaka, whether it's a BNP-led government, it's a Awami-led government. They have always been able to work effectively. And in the last few years, we've seen China being an extremely close partner. I don't expect anything to change irrespective of who comes in now. As we know, across South Asia, they have worked very effectively with whoever is in the seat of power. And with the interim government or with the next elected government, China is going to be engaged just as much strongly as they were in the past.
So they will be a major player, China.
Of course, there's no doubt on that front.
Well, China and India don't get along, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, they don't. Yeah. And I in fact think that it probably works in favor of many of the South Asian neighbors, because also having India as a strong, partner, also is a messaging to China, right? That and I think that's exactly what Bangladesh should be working on. That while they build and they continue to build on the robust partnership that India and Bangladesh has had over the several decades, similarly they would also, and I think while many are questioning whether Bangladesh is going down the way with Sri Lanka has in terms of debt servicing problems, I think Bangladesh has been a little more cautious. There has been issues, but that's more of a corruption-led issue. But Bangladesh will continue to work closely, and I think having the two partners is a good balance for both of them. And there's no doubt about the
Having a
fact
two
that which
partner
is
between
India,
China
which
and
is India and China, India and
India and
China,
China.
and both of them in their own different ways have contributed to
Okay.
Bangladesh's growth story. So why would they lose out on both these very, I think, friendly partnership that they've enjoyed on both
Do you
sides?
have a confidence in Muhammad Yunus, political party, that he will be able to sustain the law and order and retain what I consider the fair and free election? Do you have
I
confidence
have
in
a lot of hope, yes, on Professor Yunus
it?
because of what
I
he
know
is.
him
But again,
personally. I met him
yeah,
several times.
I don't, but I mean, I don't know about, I mean, he of course doesn't have a political experience in that sense. I mean,
He does
everybody in
not.
this
Well, he's
particular
new.
interim government, is inexperienced in terms of political
Right.
experiences. But so there's an issue of, the aspiration and the ambitions of the youth. And how will the interim government be able to, do they have the capacity? You need capacity, you need wherewithal, you need systemic changes, you need a proper structure to be brought in again. And so it's going to be a challenge. It's not going to be an easy task for anybody at that point. And Professor Yunus, of course, is a person that I think in Bangladesh everybody looks up to. He's
Well,
aspirational. He's
he was the fellow
aspirational.
who established the micromanagement.
Yes. So, I mean, I think there's lots of hopes pinged on him, and I'm quite confident that he's not going to disappoint his own countrymen and all of us who are watching him closely. I really
But
hope on that. But it's a huge challenge, and
it
this
is a
interim
challenge,
government looks
right?
really large. So I'm not sure, but I just hope that they don't play on the rhetorics, which they seem to be in the last couple of days, if I've noticed. And it seems there's some elements who are playing a far stronger role than we expected to. And I'm referring here to BNP and some of the Islamists. Some of the things that's brought to our notice, what is happening, is something I think this government has to rein down, kind of control that. Because you can't let Bangladesh go exactly what you had wanted to change. If you're, the same political retribution, the same rhetoric, the same,
Right, right.
that is not what we expect from this. But again, I'm very confident that the youth will ensure that one sheds those kind of unnecessary loud noises which are not required, but moves Bangladesh on a journey which is about stability and growth and peace.
I was told Muhammad Yunus was the fellow that went to the Hindu and saying that we have to live in peace and harmony together rather than fighting against each other. And I thought that was a good move on his part.
Absolutely. I mean, especially in the aftermath of the violence that took place against many of these, Hindu structures and Hindu families. I think he
Which
visited
is
a temple
wrong, which is
and
totally unacceptable to anyone, including the United
yes,
States.
yes. So, which is, I think, his move to go visit temple, talk to the many
Right.
families was certainly in the right, I think, a very good positive step forward, and I think conveyed a very strong message that I think Bangladesh should be a land of amity. It should be where everybody coexists,
Right.
and I don't see why it can't, because everybody would contribute in their own particular way to
That
the
is correct.
development of the nation.
Tell me a little bit about the Bangladesh is in terms of geography. It's right next to the West Bengal, correct?
Yes.
And is the population is what? How much is the population of the Bangladesh?
About 140 million.
140. And how many people are minorities there in Bangladesh?
Uh, the Hindu
Hindu.
minorities are about 8%, so
Oh,
tentatively
8%. So that's fairly
so
high.
13 million, yeah.
Yeah, that's fairly high. And they have to coexist as you suggested. And also, I wanted you to tell me a little bit more about Bangladesh before we depart. Do you have anything to say?
No, I'm saying that Bangladesh right now is going through a
Political
crisis. I mean,
challenges,
the
challenges.
crisis is not over, and I think, as I said, some of the unsavory incidents which has been brought to our notice, I think the whole world is watching, is something that we hope that the interim government will be able to clamp down on and ensure that what they want to do. They actually want to ensure that what the problems the Bangladesh faced in the last 10 or 15 years, it's something that they can move away from and introduce a far more different Bangladesh again, bring back the Bangladesh that they dreamed of, the Shonar Bangla that we often talk about.
Well, Bangladesh used to be part of Pakistan, as you all know.